Hi, everyone.
Hi, Sana.
Hi. People are still joining. I think we'll give it a minute more. I think we can get started. We'll start with the housekeeping stuff. I'll just give you a quick update of what's going on with the R3 scope at the moment, and then we'll move over to the SIG working group updates. So we have had these discussions with some nephew leads that SIG architecture should start focusing and helping with the R3 scope finalization, as SIG 2 and SIG 3 are very busy with R2, and this might help them a little bit more in filtering out the user stories that various working groups have created and putting them in a form that is actually more digestible. We have had those discussions started on Fridays, RX scope and planning. And last time we had the discussion, we reviewed a couple of user stories. We couldn't get to ORAN user stories. And I think a heavy discussion around that was that some user stories are still kind of in a very high level vision format, especially the ones that we reviewed from the working group 5. And we made a decision in that meeting that we will take those working group sessions and try to formalize the user stories in a form that are more digestible, and that would be a joint effort by SIG 1 and SIG 2. We are still trying to understand the best model on how to hand over the user stories to SIG 2, but a very high level proposal was discussed in that meeting and kind of was well received at that time. And the proposal document is attached to the meeting notes. If you can take a look, let me give it my share my screen again. So the RX scope document is again pasted here in this in this document. I don't have any other housekeeping items on my mind right now. Alexi is out on vacation. I'm taking over the meetings. I'm actually quite up to speed with whatever has been happening with the working group so far. But I do recall that last time we couldn't get to some working groups user stories. And I think Working Group 2 also couldn't share their updates and user stories in the RX scope meeting. If needed, we can get to the progress of the working groups, and I will go through that. Any questions, comments there? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
I
Any
think
questions?
Go ahead. Sorry, this agenda looks like it's copied over from last week on
yes,
Working Group 1 updates. So.
Yes, I was gonna just use this and make sure that I don't miss anything from here. I just quickly glanced through that, but I did copy paste this. That's right.
Okay.
Now, I was gonna take new notes on this. Anything that we need to be capturing in the housekeeping and I might have forgotten? Okay, I'll come back to that if I do remember something from the board, because I'm reviewing the board as well. We should move on to the working group updates. Which order should we start from? Should we start with the working group 2?
If you want. Yeah, so just real quick. So we've got one user story that the group has approved for RX scoping, and that's waiting in the queue for the review for them. That's to reconfigure ORAN NF. We got two that we have a meeting tomorrow. So we got a 2, which is the NF orchestration using the SMO. This is downloading a deployment using the SMO, and then deploying the near real-time RIC in X. That without the SMO, those 2 use cases, we anticipate being ready for RX review after we approve them on Wednesday. There are also 3 other use cases dealing with clusters, create cluster and register in the O cloud, and then deleting the cluster, which is a stretch. The delete cluster is. So those use cases are still being worked on. Alexis is out, but Bala is taking care of it, and he's meeting with Seishu on that this week. So once those are ready, we'll let you know. But I anticipate that for the next RX meeting that there'll be 3 use cases for review.
Anything else, Tim, besides the 3 user stories that we are taking to the next RX scope and planning meeting? Anything else that is ongoing in the working group 2 sessions that requires an update here?
No, once we're clear of these use cases, we do have 2 action items that we want to take care of. One is to try to help the service assurance and provide some requirements there, and we have another one. We have another item that we'll be looking at, but we're trying to clear the use cases, and we'll get these other 2 items that we're trying to do in the release 3 timeframe, not for development, but just for preparing for future releases.
That's right. Okay, so if we have some time, Tim, I think we'll come back to the working group 2 and take a look at the user stories with you, if that's fine with you.
Yeah, I might not be the best person for them.
Okay.
But certainly, if Barada is on, Joseph and some of these other ones are on, then they're probably best to present their use cases.
And do we have them on the call?
No. No, they're not on the call.
Okay, we'll just take a quick glance at the document, just review the document, not go deeper dive into the user stories. And I think we'll take the user stories in the RX scope meeting as we have discussed and planned.
Right.
Perfect. Working group 4, I don't want to miss any working group critical updates. Make sure that we go through everything and then we take some brainstorming discussion towards the end. So Karen, anything from the working group 4 that we should capture and bring to the attention of this group?
Nothing more than a sort of an announcement that we will meet for the first time under my sort of whatever you'd call it on Wednesday. I think it's at 7 a.m. PST or 3 p.m. Central. I think it's 3 p.m. Irish time, 4 p.m. Central European time. I'm not entirely sure, but it's in the calendar. And what I plan to do there is to spend some time going over the prior art in the space around modeling and sort of model, I guess, documentation and communication and governance and evolution. And then I've a proposal to discuss with the group. If people want to join that, then please do.
And the proposal reviews on what?
It's a proposal for review on how we go about taking forward the model documentation and the model governance and evolution.
Okay.
I'll share a document, a slide deck that I'm working on, hopefully this evening, maybe tomorrow.
Okay, perfect.
But hopefully it'll be a good discussion and looking for some good ideas from the community on that.
Perfect.
I can put my name in there if you want.
Yeah, would be good. You do that. I didn't find you. I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
sure that's the right name. Okay.
No worries.
Good. Awesome. Thanks, Karen. Working group 5, Subhash.
Yeah, hi, Sana.
Hi.
We are currently reviewing one more proposal, one more user story. So that is the impact analysis. So next meeting we are going to review it and possibly when we'll share the update by the next week. And the other story about the service assurance framework. So that we presented to work group 3 in the last meeting. But yeah, there I would like to ask actually one query. So we had shared the document before the review, and we requested for the analyzing the gap actually. So that review, I think those comments we did not receive it on that document, and also after the review, I would say it would be much helpful if we can identify those gaps and some comments on the document so that we can immediately work on those gaps in this week, and in next week we can go for another round of the review and go for the implementation. So if someone could review and identify those gaps and guide us how to deal with those gaps, so that will be much helpful for us.
I'm going to hand over to you, Subhash, for a little bit so that you can point everyone in the direction of where these documents are. I'm sure you have actually published them on the Slack channel, right?
You're right.
Okay. I'm going to give it to you in a little bit, and I think we'll just continue to take some notes in the background.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, I just saw Tim has a raised hand, and Subhash, we come back to you.
Yep.
No. Let Subhash finish, because I
Okay.
just happened to have been in the art scope, so I could let them know some of the things that they're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
So shall I? Is my screen visible?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah. So yeah, that. Okay. So shall I go through this user history, or shall I share just a high-level picture?
It's up to you. We have time. It's 10:15, and we have kind of very quickly, rapid fire, gone through all the working groups high-level updates. If you want to take some time, like 5-10 minutes, and review the user story, go for it.
Okay. Actually, most of the folks were available in the last work group 3 call. So I'll just give a high-level picture, like we address the problem, means like what we would like to deal. Currently, we have all the solution tailored for the single cluster view. So we would like to make a framework where we would have the global view of the multi-cluster environment, and we can take one informed decision on any deployed NF or do the activity related to the day 2 functionality. And with that, actually would like to take some action like self-healing, scaling, or some traffic rerouting kind of failover. So this kind of action we can take it. So so this first part actually talks about what exactly we would like to solve by the service assurance framework. And the basic idea is that the framework actually offers the capability to build some use cases on top of it. So that will take observation or observability from the NF and try to complete the service assurance loop to meet the basic requirement, basic like performance, reliability, adaptability of telecom network. So this kind of requirement it will try to meet it. Okay. So here we try to give one overall picture. Is how it will set up, like one actor or end user will provide his intent around the service assurance, and that will get converted into observability related task and also the action related. It's like what action we need to take on certain situation. So that will create the actor pod, and finally it will affect the your cluster NF. Either it will create certain policies. So this is the entire loop just to ensure that NF meets its performance or its quality of service. So just that assumption is the high level picture we had given. And then we talk about the overall steps about the framework, like what things we need to do as part of the NF. So it's a generic actually. Okay, I think it's not getting bigger. Okay, so here we try to give one generic picture of for the framework where end user interact with this service assurance controller, and they try to set up the observability on the NF, and also try to create also creates one actor pod which is responsible to execute the business logic. Again, it depends on what is deployed. It might be having the context of the NF, or it might be having some generic logic to for example to manage the scaling of the NF, or modifying the your manifest so that it can meet those requirements. Just to give an example, like suppose the UPF is giving bad performance, it is loaded, so we'll scale those UPF. And just to make another complexity, there are multiple sites where we deploy the UPF. There's a UPF chain, right? So it's not necessarily you just scale one UPF, so and you meet your quality of quality for that data traffic. You need to understand, like there are multiple UPF, so you need to scale the entire chain to meet those performance. So those kind of actually thoughts we can build up. And then I gave a use case which we can achieve, I feel we can achieve in the R3. Like Kubernetes has the default horizontal pod auto scaler, right? So this diagram actually gives that idea that actor pod talks to the HPA, horizontal pod auto scaler, and maintains the scaling of the deployment or replica set in the deployment based on the metrics or observability it observes in single cluster. So based on that, those ratings, it will maintain the scaling. So this is the simplest form of the use case that we can achieve in R3. So that idea I try to put it, that service assurance work with the actor pod. It's like it works with the HPA, and the actor pod has the business logic how to create the resources related to HPA, and finally it will maintains the scaling in the deployment. So that was the simplest use case that we can achieve in the R3. And just to complicate the same idea, instead of having the Kubernetes default HPA, we could have a specialized operator that understands the that carries the logic for the multi-cluster environment, or maybe specialized for some different business scenario. Let's assume that the operator is there. So the end user should able to deploy the actor pod which will create the resources in the workload cluster for this kind of operator. So this also we feel we can achieve in a R3. So here, for example, 3.5GC, we need to make more complicated, we need to add more functionality to 3.5GC so that it can handle certain scaling related scenarios. And those intent would be created by actor pod in the workload cluster for the scaling. And the third one where we again it's like already work group 2, they are working on one user stories for the NF reconfiguration. So where actually they deploy the ODU, and the ODU actually in the ODU it is given by the OAI, and we know that they from here actually this ODU we can capture the PRB utilization related KPI parameter that we can observe it. So the service assurance controller or service assurance could configure observability by the help of observability framework to observe the PRB utilization. And finally, whenever we observe that it crosses certain threshold, then we will reconfigure the bandwidth. Again, this API is known, and we already discussed with the OAI folks that these two are already available, so we can work on it. So this entire actually flow I have given. And the fourth one actually where I talk about the AI ML. So this is like a future goal. So I'll just skip it so that I'll talk in the context of R3. So we feel in R3, these three use cases we can achieve it. The details are also there. The flow talks about how generically or the components needed to in order to achieve this kind of functionality where we can build these three use cases. So yep, actually here actually I tried to put the whole idea what we can achieve in R3. So and also I was not able to understand clearly like how to divide it. So I need actually comments from everyone. Do you feel it's ready? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Subhash, for additional details on this.
Yeah.
You believe that the artifacts required to accomplish that in R3 are available, and you added some additional details to that. I think it's a good idea to ask the community here what additional steps are required for further refining the use case that would actually make it easier for them to see
yes.
How do we accomplish the development effort, right? So this is open to question. The floor is open to questions. And Tim, your hand still raised. I don't know if the question is for this or
no, it was for this. I lowered it and raised it again when it was ready.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So Subhash, so if I understand this correctly, is that I understand what you're trying to do, right? And I think the biggest concern from the ARC scoping meeting was this is an awful lot for release 3. Forget about the 3 or 4 different use cases you want to do on it. This just taking one use case and doing it in this framework is a bit, right? A pretty big chunk of work. And the reasoning is because there's a lot of work that's happening on the observability framework in release 3 that you're dependent upon. And then you have some tasks that you use for the actor pod. And so the request that came out of the release 3 scope would say, let's take one of these, go back to your requirements step, right? You got like 5 steps there, right? And it says, let's break down those steps into things that you would have to do to meet this, right? And I think what the advice will come out of that is maybe we do this in 2 releases. In the first release, we take and we integrate the controller, the service assurance controller, into the observability framework such that we can observe things. We're not going to act on them yet. We're going to act on them in release 4, but at least we can observe things, right? And then that integrates into the observability framework, right? It introduces your service controller, but doesn't introduce the actor pod yet, right? And so those would be a set of tasks. So if you go back to your steps that you have, right, your requirements, your steps go up. I think what people, I'm speaking for people, but yeah, you can even use this one, right? So You have step one that you're going to introduce. Well, the first task that you're going to introduce is an SA controller. Okay, so we've got tasks that go around to how to introduce an SA controller. And the SA controller is only capable right now of setting up the configuration of the KPI. The other task that it has to be able to do is have the ability to create an actor pod that goes across different workloads. We might want to do that for a future release, right? But if we can get an SA controller that can get things observed, may not be able to act on them yet, and into that data lake, that might be what we can do for release 3 when we look at tasking and scoping and time.
Actually, Tim, could I interrupt?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Actually, this I tried to convey this idea. The case one does not require observability currently. It is the simplest form of it, where I don't depend on the observability. So the metric service, that is like an infra-related KPI. It is already available in the Kubernetes cluster. So that with the I'll just visualize there is a single cluster I'm trying to manage, trying to manage the scaling within that cluster with that
but
the
hang
metrics exist in single cluster. Yeah.
No, you're missing the point, right? So
yeah.
So you're saying you're not using the observability framework for that. You're using an internal metric service, which is even different, right? Because that's different. You're saying I'm not using observability framework for this. I'm using a different metric service for the observability that I'm setting up. That's a different variation of using.
Yeah.
That's a different variation than using the observability framework. What I believe that what the concern was that there was a lot of different variations for this, and the use case has reliance on an observability framework, because that's what everyone thought, right? You're saying this one might not, right? I'm
saying, so that's why I written like
but even if you do that, right? Even if you do that, you still got the same problem. I've got to introduce the service assurance controller, right? I have to set up the metric service, right? I just not reliant upon the observability, and then I have to actually it's almost like I set it up for the metric service, and I have to know where the metric service puts the metrics before I have to extract it out. So I have to be able to realize I might have different sources, right? For my service controller that relates to observability, just not the observability framework. Point is that if you go back to your use case, your steps 6, 7, 8, whatever it is, right? I think what you're talking about is now I'm going to have to say what exactly, when I create an SACR, what's that going to look like, right? And then when I ask that to configure some sort of NF KPI condition, you've got actually a split on that. One is going to the observability framework, and is it the observability framework in the management cluster and the workload, wherever it's at, right? Or is it the metric service and the workload and management? You haven't dictated that. But if you listed out each of those tasks, right, that says to do number 1, what do I have to do? To do number 2, what do I have to do? To do number 3, what are the tasks involved? To do number 4, what are the tasks involved? And I think what they're saying is that when they finally get down to it, it says the best that you're going to be able to do is introduce that SA in release 3, introduce that SA, and set up the NF for the observability such that it fills whatever data lake it is. Then in release 4, we'll introduce the actor that you want and be able to do the recommendation. That's what I think where people were going yesterday. So, or Friday, whichever day we're at.
Yes, Friday. Thanks, Tim. I think this did give Subhash some additional ideas on how do we break this further down. We have 3 more raised hands. We'll just go to them in the order. Who's next? Paul, Wim, Ravi? I think Ravi
I think Ravi's hand was up first.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I think, going through this, since you have reviewed this we had a pass through of this again, and going to what Wim also had last Friday, right? I mean, I think the title itself kind of has to be kind of more kind of specific, because in this whole architecture or the system what you're presenting, I see the key is the actor pod, right? An actor pod is basically something that is trying to solve an optimization problem that you're going to handle, say in day 2 or day 3 kind of during the runtime, aspect of the system. So I would kind of make it more precise in terms of exactly what is that kind of the problem that you're trying to address. I mean, this kind of runs in where we can take it. It's basically very akin to what the RIC and all tries to do in terms of the text apps. With either traffic steering use case or QoS optimization or layer one massive MIMO kind of optimization and things like that. So I would suggest, what is the end-to-end use case you're trying to address? At the end of the day, you're always trying to make the end user happy, right? There are more, say, users kind of joining the cell, and then you're probably provisioning more PRBs, or sorry, more PDU sessions. And if you're doing something observability at the UPF, then your number of kind of the PDU sessions are going certain thresholds, so for which you require another UPF and so on. So in that case, if you try to kind of define that optimization problem, then you can define the kind of specific metrics that you're interested in, whether you're taking metrics from the infrastructure or your metrics from the specific service layer and so on. And then I think the key is that actor pod, exactly what is the logic you're going to implement within the actor pod to basically manage those specific eventualities where those SLAs are being kind of violated. So I would kind of make it a little bit more precise from the use case perspective and kind of identify what network function you're trying to do, tie it to an end-to-end use case, and show the closed loop optimization that you're trying to achieve. That's where I feel there are many of those loose ends where you would have to fill a lot of gaps to take it towards the realization. And of course, to also to kind of add to what Tim had mentioned in terms of all those new building blocks that you require. So my 2 cents, but I will also put these comments in the document as well. Subhash.
Ravi, actually, what I'm proposing to have a generic platform. So I'm trying to build a platform, and definitely for the use case, again, we can refine it as a first step. We can take any scaling or any simple use case, we can take it. But ultimately, we need to define one common platform. So that I'm attempting it. That I would like to attempt.
Yeah, and for that you need feedback. You need feedback from basically SIG2 as well on their view on building that platform, and if it is feasible, if it is, what would be, basically you need some support in helping you brainstorm the steps, how to break down the development of that platform and then the execution of the smallest, easier incremental steps through that. And for that, we had requested that we would use the working group 5 meeting and kind of request everyone, and now it's the second time we're asking this forum that whoever is producing ideas, we need to get some concrete help to Subhash in terms of giving him additional support in number one, getting the view from SIG2 on their view of this platform and the current state of the R2 in respect to the current state of R2, and break it down further into some digestible tasks, which could potentially become the scope for R3. So Subhash, I think everybody's clear on what you're proposing. It's an excellent idea. We need to work as a community to drill down into some additional steps through this and try to come up with an achievable scope for R3. We have additional raised hands. Wim, Tal, you guys go ahead.
I can go ahead. I have a feeling Wim and I might have similar comments here.
Okay, but, I feel that too. Go ahead.
Yeah, we went maybe in too much detail here, but I do want to compliment what Tim said. About we need to dive deeper into how where observability fits in here. But I also want to highlight scalability, right? The diagrams show it rather straightforward, right? We have 3 pods, right? It's obviously not that, right? The 3 pods need 3 different configurations possibly. And it's not just the UPF that is duplicated, but components that connect to the UPF need to now know that there are 3 copies and they need to work against them. So in my view, this is some of the most exciting things that Nefio brings to the table, right? The ability to solve these kind of difficult problems, to have intelligence baked in an operator, right, that would be able to reconfigure according to your declaration. So if you just say in the CR, right, the UPF count is now 3, the system will be able to know what to do to make it 3 in the right way, right? And doing it while minimizing losses of connection, right? Because if you need to restart pods, well, if you're restarting all of them with a new configuration, then now you have downtime, right? So a smart way to scale would be to keep one working and maybe restart them in some order that makes sure the connections are maintained. So there's a lot of deep diving to go in there. It's not directly a part of the SA use case, right? We can say, you know, some operator handles it, but I think that's where a lot of the exciting work will be happening regarding this.
Right.
So there's a lot more work to do here,
right.
for sure.
Tol, I think you made an excellent comment on the scalability and the exciting part of this happening in Nephew, which kind of puts Nephew apart from all the existing policy work that has been happening in the industry before. So this is an important use case, and I think this will also do some of the foundational work towards the ORAN user stories as well, which we'll review with them as well. One thing that I felt is a very good idea to accomplish at this stage is R2 is almost in the finalizing stage, right? I think from the architectural perspective, from the components readiness perspective, we should do a deep dive with SIG2 in this SIG1 meeting and help everyone see where is the current state of affairs in R2? Like, what did you really accomplish in terms of delivering the code? That deep dive will actually help people in SIG1 and about the user stories to brainstorm and connect with the actual state of the architecture and then foresee which components are missing. How do we break this further down? I think we need some feedback on R2. Who could do this for us in the next meeting?
Well,
Tol?
Yeah, sure, we can do it. We have all the materials.
Like not the release notes, like a different perspective. Like with respect to the future user stories, like give us a decomposition of the architecture, like what's in ground today, so that we can think better on what could be built on it and what's the short-term scope for R3.
Sure, I think at the end of the day, you won't find it very exciting, you know, in terms of that would make an effect for it's just a fact. R2 is more of a incremental progress. I would suggest maybe instead of that, maybe doing a kind of Q&A. So specific questions about what's possible or what we're working on. And maybe that would be better than just summarizing. Because I think we're going to get a lot of these summaries soon in the TSC and everything.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of that, but sometimes my answers, basically my questions are not answered. So what do we do next time? In the next meeting, I'll put this agenda for us. We review 5-10 minutes, just the release notes and whatever artifacts, documents you have to all, just keep it handy and we'll keep it informal. And then you can drive some of the discussion with us in the form of Q&A. So if I have a question, we don't have any module for observability. We don't have any data lake. So even if you're talking about building the platform, are there any components at all that could potentially evolve to basically realize that platform? Or do we have to build from scratch? So some of these Q&A will actually help us define the scope for R3, at least to give you a tangible scope for R3. And that would be a good discussion for this forum.
Sure, I would suggest maybe because you mentioned unsolved questions that need to be answered. So maybe we can start a list of questions and everybody here in SIG1 can start adding questions that they have and we can consider how to answer them.
Okay, should we do the questions exercise right away? Like I can create a document, I can link it to our meeting notes, and then whoever has questions on R2, like what is it that we want to discover about R2's final state, besides what's happening on the release notes? Then you will have some meat before coming to the meeting.
Yeah, I don't think we need a new document. We can put it in the agenda for next meeting. Just here's a list of questions. Feel free to add more. Okay,
I can do this here. So basically, I gave this to Tol and list of questions. I'm going to add my questions and I will be happy for anyone who has access to the document to add more questions.
I think Sana Wim also has his hands raised.
Okay, I will. Okay, go ahead, Wim. As I'm
typing,
no,
but it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. No, I was just yeah. I don't have a lot to add, so maybe. But yeah, so we need to refine this use case, and my goal is to comment it. But we should have this discussion in the working group 5 meeting, right? To to help Sebastian go to the next stage. So, but yeah, there is a lot to do here. and we have to break it down. Even the first use case that we have discussed, there's multiple ways to skin the cat, right? So and we should actually discuss various options. In my view, you don't even need the active pod for use case one at all, because you can do with all the mechanics that Kubernetes gives us. But let's discuss that in working group 5, and
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
we can close it out.
Yeah,
absolutely. So if you guys can see the screen in the meeting notes, I have requested Tall to give us a very quick review of the R2 current state. And with that, we can ask him additional questions about the component architecture, what's in ground, what's missing. And then I think that will give us additional ideas on how do we come up with the R3 scope. So with that, I'm parking this here. Anyone else who have additional questions is free to basically put those questions here. Tall or Wim, whoever is attending the next week's basically meeting, can actually see the list of questions that we have from SIG1 perspective for them, and we can actually spend like half an hour on just the R2 details. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I can't see raised hands like that. So with that, I was thinking that we have a clear action item for working group 5. Now Subhash will have that meeting on Friday. I think Subhash, your meeting is on Friday, Wednesday.
it is on Thursday.
Okay, Thursday.
Yep.
Yes, Friday we have the RX meeting. So Thursday, whoever has some concrete ideas for Subhash to help him break this down further into some concrete steps, component architecture, missing platform components, what could be the small incremental steps for us to realize the first use case in a closed loop? I think that would be a very helpful next step, and Subhash requires some input from community at the moment. So we can join his meeting. Subhash, I'll try to join as well and help him break this down. And with that, I'm parking working group 5 discussion, and I'm going to hand over to Tim to give us a little bit of more peek into the working group 2 user stories, and we can get a feel of like what's coming up in the RX scope and planning meeting then.
Okay, I'll do what I can.
Yeah.
All right. So, as we said, there's 6 user stories that we're looking at for release 3. And they're all on the shared drive, and we've been talking about these for the last couple of months, certainly within the working group 2, to come to this consensus, right? And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have a set of infrastructure use cases that deal with the creation of the cluster itself, the K cluster. And that will be done via the SMO, and so it will communicate to an IMS entity in the O Cloud to create a cluster using the cluster template. They'll be using the CAPI APIs for this, the cluster APIs for this that exist today, and that's the big piece here, so that you can see the component architecture that they've outlined, as well as the CAPI interface that they have in the blueprints. Okay, so this is where they're at now. Again, Bala is taking over for Alexis while he's off to finish this up. They have some discussions that they have to go through back with the SMO team with Seishu prior to bringing this forward. But you can see the extent here is, and again for scoping, the big one is really that they'll be utilizing the cluster API for this, right? It gets down to the cloud.
Then a quick question: do we have an SMO to test with?
Oh yeah. So OSC is bringing the SMO components, right? So what we realized when we went through and talked with them a little bit further, that the Kubernetes side of the FOCOM and the NFO are rudimentary at best. And so they have a lot of work that they are doing as part of the SMO and using Nepio enablers, but they're going to be doing that out of the OSC organization. Did that answer your question?
And OSC, what is OSC? Is
ORAN software.
Yeah,
it's the ORAN software community. It's the people that build all the the SMO services that are part of ORAN.
And do okay, let's
just
not
like
review the use
it's
case.
yeah, it's just like for OEI doing the network functions for ORAN, OSC is doing the
Okay.
SMO functions. Generally, it's the case that works, right?
Yeah, thanks. By the way, just an overall comment. Are we going to identify the use case we are going to discuss on Friday? Because I think it's good for people to have the time to review that.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is the use case that's ready to go. It's the reconfigure
So
ORAN.
it's basically the last one, right? Yeah, this one, right?
Yes, it's been announced, and it's really just taking release 2 and extending it a little bit to do reconfiguration of the bandwidth, similar to what they did with the UPF side. So we can reconfigure it through the.
Can we add that? Can we add that to the document on Friday? Sorry to interrupt. Can we add that to the document for the Friday review at least, and it's clear to everyone? Because I think we have an agenda, right?
Okay, so then we need some procedures, guys. So I was told.
Yeah, so that's why I was asking. What I thought I asked on Friday meeting. Can we add those items to the agenda of the meeting, because we should have in Slack an agenda, I guess.
I don't have a problem adding it. I just need to know that I'm permitted to do that, because right now, what I'm doing.
I think everyone should be able to add to the agenda. I think.
Hang on, Wim. The last time we talked was that the working group 1, when use cases are ready, we would announce them. Now there's a group there's a person that's leading that, right? Leading the RX scoping. Now they're either going to put it on, or the people that are announcing the use cases are putting it on. I don't care which one it is, right? But my assumption was that I would do the announcement, they would put it on to the agenda, because they're the ones.
I think in my view, personally, I think anyone who feels their use case is ready can add them, right? But okay.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're both right. You're both pointing to the same thing. Me and Alexi are currently taking care of the scope of the RX scope and planning meeting, and we have had. We are at the early stage of arriving at the process, so the process is kind of fluid at the moment. But Tim, I think we needed the most mature user stories to become the candidate for RX scope and planning. And I think in a couple of minutes ago, you shared that there are 2 or 3 user stories that we are slotting for the RX scope and planning, and I felt as if we are good there. Is there still a confusion on which user stories do we want to share with RX?
No. The confusion is that who's going to go put it onto the agenda. So there's an RX.
My question is, Sani, can we have one place where we put this? Is my question basically.
Yeah, exactly.
My view is.
Yeah. They're already attached, Wim. They're already attached to this document, the one that Tim's sharing right now. This document is already shared. The links are all there.
Yeah, but there are 6 here, right? So which one is going to be addressed on Friday?
We'll review that with Tim, and Tim will bring the 3 user stories that we discussed.
No, but I think what he's saying is on this. Hang on, Wim, just a second. I understand what you want, Wim. Okay, so on here there should be an agenda for whatever day it is, right? For 2/2, right? So I should have an agenda item for 2/2 where we would say, hey, we're going to go look at reconfigure NF. We're going to look at whatever the 3 are, whatever use cases that get announced on that channel. Someone should put on here to say for what day are we going to review that, right? Okay, so
and the idea is for people to prepare, Sana, right? So people,
I agree.
It's not
Denise.
Like the problem with the service assurance, although I was aware, but we announced on Thursday that we'll discuss on Friday. I think that's part of why you have very few comments on the document.
Right. Yeah. So you can peek into it and come prepared with good questions.
Correct. Yeah.
Tim, I can do that. You tell me which 3. I'll paste them here, or you have access to the document. You put in and ping me, like you put these 3 user stories there for review.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out. I don't care. Honestly, I don't care how we do it, right?
Okay.
You're going to have questions that say, well, then how do we prioritize what goes in there? But if you want me to put them in, I'll be glad to do that, right? I'm just trying not to get in your stuff, right? That's why we were announcing on network architecture that these are ready to go. But if you want us to then build the agenda as well as do the announcement, then that's fine with me as well.
Okay, Tim, I'm completely flexible. I will select the 3 user stories and decide for the agenda, but I would like to know from your perspective which 3 are the most mature like
Yeah.
short-term priority ones, right? And we are good with that. Me and Alexi are very flexible, letting you decide the high priority user stories, or we come up with that. We are flexible with that.
Yeah. So we already, yes. So I will let you know. So I prefer that you run your agenda and your prioritization. So I'll let you know via the network architecture, the 3 that are ready. I'll do that right after this meeting. I think there's already something out there, but I'll redo it. So that's fine.
Awesome.
Okay.
We'll take care of it. Somehow, Wim, it's going to be taken care of, and you would have access to the user stories that we.
No, it's not only for me, by the way, but it's also for others. But the second thing I wanted to say as a comment, which I said it before, we should not use the Friday meeting to basically understand the use case. That should have happened before. If we spend the time to understand the use case, I think we are not using our time the most efficient way, because then we are reviewing those use cases.
I agree.
Whereas the goal is to focus on the impact and whether the scope is clear and whether we can move ahead, right? So we should focus really on.
I agree.
And that's why I was asking this week of time to at least have a buffer for people, because they're busy. At least people have the time to review and get their questions answered, hopefully, right?
Yeah,
because in one of the documents, I asked a bunch of questions last week, which I don't think I had been answered. But
okay, Wim, let's do this. Let's do this and let's agree on this, okay? Lots of documentation has already gone by SIG1, already gone, right? Yeah. We have seen excellent work so far. I'm going to put the 3 user stories. I'll circle back with him. I'll put 3 user stories as candidate for the Friday meeting. And I want a written response on the 3 user stories in the format that I shared in the previous meeting from SIG2, because that's the only way I can understand what is the SIG2 perspective on these user stories. Even if it is not complete, I want just attempt on the document, which is showing effort index,
you'll see. So
components.
Sana, you'll see
3.
in one of the or 2 of the 3 documents that were on the list. You see a bunch of questions from me in that document.
On the process document?
No, on the use case document.
The
related
use
to
that
your.
Tim shared?
Yes.
Which
Tim,
one are you talking about?
Have you seen the questions from?
See, the one that I put a bunch of questions on was the run rig, because that was one of them. The rig.
Yeah, they should be. Yeah, so if you ask those questions on the rig, or not the the near real time rig that's coming out of there. I saw that there was a couple out there. My assumption was that they're answering those questions. Again, I was going to give verification of that on Wednesday, but okay.
No, it doesn't. See, there is time, right? So it doesn't have to be the next day. Yeah.
Wim, do you believe those questions and getting answer to the questions is a prerequisite for SIG2 to come back with a response on the user stories?
Yeah, I at least see that for me the results of who is doing what and stuff like that. So it's part of the impact analysis, right? So why I'm asking these questions, one is clarification on the use case. Second is on some of the aspects that determine what is the implications, right? So that's basically at least my analysis of what I understood from the use case. Is either I ask questions related to the use case because I don't understand them, or I'm asking questions on the implementations and the impact that it has on the architecture and what have you, right?
Yeah, that's I'll point to Robbie and I believe it's Robbie and Seishu are doing. Oh, I'm sorry, Nathan's doing this one. So I'll point to the right people to make sure that they know that there's outstanding questions for you.
And I believe this is the process for now, is that we ask the question. So in the Friday meeting, we should have either answers to it or maybe at that time some clarification or something like that. But with the goal to move forward, right? Because otherwise we have a bureaucracy, which is not the goal, I think.
Absolutely. The process is not bureaucracy based. I think the process is in a way that extends collaboration and understanding for both SIG1 and SIG2. And the Friday's meeting was essentially designed to be a collaborative meeting, not something in which SIG1 comes and presents and we don't have the effective feedback from SIG2. So if the feedback is in the form of questions, we might go with the questions, but eventually we would like to get some response against every user story to get a feasibility analysis of what's your perspective of the user story. Like, why is it difficult? Help us understand your side of the world a little bit better as well, right? Which is going to help SIG1 come back even better. Like next time, they will only choose what's more relevant to the current context of development within that release. And we are improving. So our scope and meeting was kind of like more confusing the first time. Second time we made a little bit more progress, and I'm hoping it's getting better. So let's try making this even better this time. And for that, I'm going to circle back with Tim. Create agenda for the next Friday's meeting. Everybody who is attending the Friday's meeting will take a peek into the user stories. Throughout the week, we'll ask questions. And once we are in the Friday meeting, in some form, I would also like to listen and hear from SIG2 their perspective on the user story. If it cannot be done, what are components that are missing? If it can be done, how do you see it happening? How do we further break it down, or do we accomplish it like that? So basically, a deeper dive from SIG2. Could be the template that I shared, could be another form. It doesn't matter. It should be what makes things useful.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. So these are the three that are coming to you. And again, the one that's been approved is the reconfigure NF, and the other two that are probably coming to you from Wednesday once we get it okay is this deploy without and NF orchestration with the SMO. And so, you know, those will be the three that are first in, right? And again, the cluster stuff is going to be after Bala gets them complete, right? So I anticipate that this won't gate. So
yeah, Wim, I did see your questions on that. I think you have put some questions on the deck, on the PowerPoint deck, where there's some realization.
Yeah, also I started to also on this one. I started to come. I think the reconfigure, which is the most ready, I did not do yet, but I was because I didn't find I had all the time yet. But I was traveling last week, so. But I will do before the
in this,
so
you have to open the comments. It doesn't show up that way. You just have to go on the top.
On the top.
That one. Yeah, I think that's where. So just link there. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's not obvious. I had to figure it out. Okay, Wim's comments were there, so we will address it. I'm meeting Seshu and Sagar tonight.
Yeah, and I will do another review as well. So I'll try to do it before your Wednesday meeting. Yeah.
And so the design details for the NF orchestration using the SMO, they use the PowerPoint presentation for it. So if you have comments for design details, put it in here, right? As Wim had done.
Yeah. Right? So that's okay, right?
Okay.
Okay, but and by the way, this is not only I think if other people have different view, please comment. But that's how I see the process a little bit. But sorry, Tom.
Yeah, I'm basically agreeing with Wim. I saw some of the questions he posted, and they're all the correct ones, right? I just want to say, you know, things we're a little tense here today. I just want to relax this tension a little bit. Once the questions are there, you know, they're there. You know, we'll get to them. I think the questions aren't always easy to answer, and there might not be a definitive answer immediately, and the answer might evolve as the documents evolve, right? So. Yeah, I think it's important that the questions are there, right, and organized. And if we agree to use these comments as a way to register the questions, then we just have to highlight that the questions are there, even if we can't get to them immediately with an answer, right? But they do have to be answered eventually.
Yeah. So it's okay to comment. We're perfectly good with comments.
Exactly. Yeah. And just to give it a little parallel, you know, we're facing similar sometimes process frustration in SIG2 and SIG3, where we have, you know, a more formal review process for code. Of course, you know, code is a bit more specific than English written documents, but we need to be patient with each other, I think, in terms of getting things resolved, right? And if something is urgent, you know, you can ping an individual person, look, I need a response for this soon. But let's give all of us a little bit of breathing room to answer when we can.
Yeah, right. I agree with you, Don. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I was going to say, so those are the three that you certainly one, and the reconfiguring NF, and the other two we'll make the assessment on that on Wednesday, and then make any announcement that comes out on Thursday on that one. But you can always comment. So, you know, there's 6 that are out there, and anyone can comment on any time. Hopefully the guys are responding. So, and if they're not, then let us know. We'll try to move them along. Okay, so that's everything I have.
Thanks so much, Tim. And Tim, I'll take care of the agenda for Friday so that there is more publication on the user stories that we'll be reviewing. And Tol and Wim, I see that this is a lot of stressful time for R2 getting out of the door. But my honest expectation is that SIG2 should give us a little bit more feedback into what SIG1's producing, because this will help SIG1 produce better. Like things would come in more context. Like we are trying to improve the frequencies, and this will actually help us understand your side of the world a little bit better. And maybe this gap will shrink over time, of course, and it's getting better. It's slightly going there. I see it could get even better if we get a little bit more pragmatic response from SIG2 on every document that we produce and create and we present. And questions is an excellent form. We need to continue iterating on the process on how do we establish the bilateral communication on every story. And we also discussed about how do we exchange some of the issues that we bring up on the board, for example, user stories, and take it over to the SIG2 board. I think there's a lot of cleaning up on the process that's still required. How, when, what. We are getting there, but I think it's the need of this time now to understand the process, publish that so everyone's understanding their action items and moving forward with that.
Cool, nice, Sana.
Thanks, Bala.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Anna.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks,
Thank
Paul,
you.
Wim.
Cool.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Okay, have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.